What's going on, everyone? So, Bronny James is expected to play the first game of the season, right? Lakers kind of get the LeBron Bronny moment out of the way, right? Let them kind of share that moment on the floor together. Imagine it'll probably be, 5 minutes or whatever early in the game, and then pull Bronny out and he'll get back to the G League. I can see Bronny playing a random game here and there, right? Like, I think games that are meaningful to like LeBron, like the Cavs. I could see when they are in Cleveland, Bronny playing alongside LeBron James, right? Maybe Miami. I could see something like that, right? Kind of go on like the LeBron tour where Bronny gets to play. Bronny will play, the usual garbage time minutes, but outside of that, the likelihood of him playing actual meaningful NBA minutes is slim to none. Bronny James himself has said that he's going to spend the year in the G League. Lakers have kind of made that clear that no, he's a development guy, right? And he's a guy that has been putting in the work. He's been working his tail off, so you got to give him credit in that regard. But he's a guy that I've been very defensive of because I do think that he has a lot of potential. I do think he, at worst, as a point of attack, an Avery Bradley type, right? George Hill type, like that 3-and-D style guard. I think he has the potential to do that. Best case scenario, he's like a Derek White, Drew Holiday type, right? But even if he's not, like, even if he doesn't reach that, even if he does, like I said, like a George Hill, an Avery Bradley type, like that'd be perfect, right? Not everyone has to be a superstar. Not everyone has to be, a top 10 player in the league. You need those hard-working guys that'll do the dirty work, play their role, play their part, and Bronny James is very likely a guy that could do that. But I want to talk about, what if Bronny is really good, right? Like, what if that game, he plays 5 minutes and he's just excellent, right? And he's like defending and he's rebounding and he's making plays and he's doing all the things, he's hitting some shots, right? One, I do want to start by saying that I think even if he dropped 20 in that game, I don't think you play him. I think he still spends the time in the G League, just because I do think that there is that adrenaline and fading into the moment, right? Like, I'm sure if you've played sports, you are familiar with kind of getting in a zone, right? Like, as somebody that played basketball growing up, I had moments where I was just in the zone, and it's like you don't even register what's going on, right? Like you get out of it and you're just like, what just happened, right? Like, it's like time just skipped for you. So I could see, the excitement, the adrenaline. It's your first game, right? Guys are usually either really good or really bad. But he gets to play alongside LeBron, who LeBron's probably going to make him look as good as possible. I just think that even if he is great, probably more likely than not that moment. I think if LeBron or if Bronny is playing any meaningful minutes regularly, there's a problem. Something happened, right? Which, knock on wood, hopefully that's not the case. I think there's several other options, right? But walk with me for a minute, right? I know a lot of people are think Bronny's the worst player ever, even though he hasn't played an actual NBA game yet. But what if he is actually good out the gate? And I'm not talking about superstar or anything like that. I'm not talking about a best player. I'm talking about no, he's excellent point of attack defense, right? Working hard, hitting shots, right? Just being a quality, or looks like a quality rotation piece. Would the Lakers be able to find a spot for him, right? Well, right off the bat, you have D'Lo and Reeves. D'Lo's your point, Reeves is your 2, but either could slide over to the 2, right? So, you could slot Bronny at the point and give you that athleticism, that point of attack, defensive guard alongside D'Lo or alongside Reeves. But also, both of these guys, as much as they could slide over to 2, they both could slide over to the point. Now, Reeves, I'm not super sold on as your primary playmaker. But if in a pinch something happened, right, you could always use Austin Reeves if you need to. Obviously, LeBron James. But LeBron wants to play more off ball. JJ Redick has plans to play LeBron more off ball, right? So Austin Reeves, I think, again, can kind of step into that role where D'Lo, hopefully, JJ kind of allows him to be more of a playmaker this season. Hopefully, JJ allows him to kind of play his game a little better because he is and he has been very good in that regard as a playmaker. So, Bronny's definitely not going to start over these guys. Like I said, disaster has struck if Bronny is doing that. But again, not even talking about starting, right? These two guys are your starters most likely, unless, trade goes down or something like that. But even in a backup role, right? Well, you have Gabe Vincent. So, unless you either trade Gabe Vincent or, injuries or something like that, then, you're going to go with Gabe Vincent over Bronny regardless, right? Now, the bright side of Bronny looking good right out the gate is that, like, it could give you a little more flexibility to trade Gabe Vincent, right? Give you a little more confidence to trade Gabe Vincent. Now, I mean, especially when you get to the playoffs. During the regular season, you probably get away with it. But once you get to the playoffs, I think, that's where Gabe Vincent would really shine as he is a guy that has experience. He's a guy that's kind of been there and done that, right? He was the starting point guard on a finals team and was arguably the third best player the entire way. So you be trading the consistency, the confidence, the experience for a guy that just doesn't have any of that yet, right? He's got to build that. He's got to earn that. He's got to experience that. But ultimately, right, like if Bronny was really good, again, this is just more of like a hypothetical, like because so many people think he's just total bum. Well, what if he's not? Right? Like, what if he is actually good? What if he does show real, like, at least signs or promise at an NBA level out the gate? Again, I'm not expecting him to come in and be your superstar. I'm not expecting him to come in and play a huge role. But again, like if you were to get rid of Gabe Vincent, or knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen. But if he ends up getting injured again or anything, you may have a need for a guy. Right now, the problem is wouldn't you go with Jalen Hood-Schifino? Right? Wouldn't Jalen Hood-Schifino be your immediate option? Right? Wouldn't Jalen Hood-Schifino be the guy that you would look to kind of fill that role, fill that gap? Plus, he's bigger, right? So, if you were ever going to give Jalen Hood-Schifino the opportunity, it would be then. It'd be because something happened and you needed him to step up in a pinch. And I just don't see Bronny playing over Jalen Hood-Schifino unless, again, Bronny is just that good, that better, maybe a better shooter. But Jalen Hood-Schifino shot like 43% from three in the G League, right? Now, I'm not expecting him to come into the NBA and shoot 43%, but even like 37%, 36%, right, which would be a significant drop-off. Right? If he can shoot with some consistency or regularity, you're going to choose Jalen Hood-Schifino over him, at least for now. Could that change, a couple of years, a year or two? Yeah. But as of right now, I would imagine that you're going to go with Jalen Hood-Schifino, unless Bronny's just clearly that much better, or Jalen Hood-Schifino just does look like how a lot of people feel, which is that he's a bust. I'm not ready to call Jalen Hood-Schifino a bust yet, but a lot of people seem not super high, not super thrilled Jalen Hood-Schifino. The idea is like, both of these guys are kind of your point of attack, right? Like, if anyone was going to argue the need for, or the lack thereof, for Bronny James, it's because of Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? Unless Jalen Hood-Schifino clearly becomes a clear-cut starter, right? And then it's like, we could have him and then Bronny James, who's similar but smaller, as your primary backup, right? Maybe something like that could work. But realistically, you're probably deciding between the two, and one's eventually going to end up elsewhere. Whether that's Bronny, whether that's LeBron, or Jalen Hood-Schifino. But, look, I'm not going to put a ceiling on Bronny James this season. Now, if I had to guess, if I had to, put, my money where my mouth is type thing, I would imagine that if Bronny James, even if he was good or looked good out the gate, he still would probably spend the year in the G League. he is on the roster, right? So it's not one of those things where he can only play X amount of games, but you got to imagine that even if he looks like, let's say he looks, unless he's just like dominant, which I don't see happening yet, right? I don't think that he realistically plays more than like a handful of games in a meaningful way, right? Like I said, I could see him playing 20 games or whatever, because whether the Lakers are up 30 or down 30, you got garbage time, and Bronny James gets to step in and play a few minutes. But as far I'm talking about like meaningful, actual like rotation minutes, I think he only plays a handful of games, if that. Like I said, he'll play opening night. I could see him playing against like the Cavs. I could see him playing against Miami. Right? I could see him, get a handful of games against some of these teams. But beyond that, I don't see him really getting a real role, even if he is really good out the gate. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. You excited for Bronny James? Do you have faith in Bronny James? If he's really good, would you play him? Right? Is it one of those things like, hey, man, if he's good enough, you figure it out, you put him out there, right? Like you let him get the run in. Do you think like, no, even if he is great, you just don't have the spot, you don't have the space, like you're not playing him over several guys, right? Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot, so we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.